How much can you tell us about Rendezvous with Rama?
Oh, okay. So that was a long time ago. I wrote my draft in 2008.
Oh, wow.
I was let me get this right. I was either the fifth or the sixth writer hired to work on that script. And at the time, David Fincher was going to be directing it. I never got to meet him. So I never got any director's notes or anything. There have been, I want to say 6, maybe 8 other writers since me. The problem with the movie, if you've read the book, there's no characterization whatsoever. You've got to make the characters and characterize it. There's names, but you don't really know much about them. And they're all like intent on, on studying this thing. What I did with the script, which didn't appear in previous drafts, was I humanized all the characters. I gave them backstories and humor. I'd been in the military, so I knew what it was like to have a bunch of people stuck in a can, for months on end, trying to achieve an objective. And so I took more of a, some of those submarine movie approaches, like Das Boot and Humper Red October and that kind of thing. But I added some humor and I added some different stuff to it. And I really have honestly no idea how much of any of that has survived. I suspect none of it has. I know at the time I had a big blow up with the producer, who is a friend, who eventually ended up producing Hunting Atlantis. So, it's not the end of the road by any stretch. But we had a big creative difference. I don't think we spoke to each other for about 2 years, because I pointed out everything that was wrong in the previous drafts. But I have the bedside manner of an anvil, so I'm not really good. My notes consist of this is shit, this is great, this is shit, this is great. And so she didn't like that. And I don't blame her in retrospect, but also I got conflicting notes. So the development producer at the time kept giving me notes. And I won't say what they are. I don't want to embarrass her. I mean, she's a nice person, but she was giving me notes. But then the producer was contradicting her and saying, don't listen to the development producer. I'm like, well, she's your employee. Why are you making me work with her if you don't want me to follow her? Yeah. Are you to communicate? Which they weren't, it turns out, really on the same page. What happened was, when I did finally submit my draft, because of the way I'd criticised the other drafts, she turned around and said, this is the worst script I've ever read. I'm not going to submit it to anybody. But what she didn't know is I'd given it to 3 A-list screenwriters to read before I submitted it to her, who all said, this is a fantastic script. They should make this tomorrow. So I knew I just insulted her. It was like a personal affront. So my script got just put in a drawer. So I knew everything she just told me was just basically bull. But I'd burned to bridge for a while. but essentially, what I did with that script was try and make certain things a bit more human. So I had a character who was Muslim. They have to pray toward Mecca. That's how they pray. And so he's in space. He's like out near freaking Pluto or something. So all he could do every day was try and measure on a porthole where Earth was and then pray in that direction. Little things like that. They had supply tubes that would show up, and you know, someone had sent mail to a girlfriend and like a year and a half earlier, and he gets a return thing, and it's like, there's email, but he wanted to do a handwritten thing, and it gets sent back, return to sender, and he's like, he's gutted. It's been a year and a half, and she basically ghosts him, and he's this young kid. You got like I put 3D printers on the ship so you could print engine parts and things. But at the time I wrote it, 3D printers were a concept that didn't exist. So I remember having a meeting with people for hours trying to explain what a 3D printer was. And so I'd looked up all the technology so that everything in the script worked, so that the ship worked and everything functioned and had a purpose. All of that was missing before. So it felt real. I'm still, to this day, happy with what I did. If I wrote it now, well, it's like 14 years later, I'd completely change it. And she had to, because I said I stepped away from the business. I had stepped away at that point. She happened to be, the reason I got the job, she happened to be the best friend of my wife. And I didn't marry a few people in the movie business. I didn't know that at the time. And she talked me into it. And she just kept hammering away at me. Look, please come back. It was like the CIA, like your Godfather. You think you're at me, pull you back here. And so she was like, no, please give a crack at it. And it took a while. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then, of course, it blows up in my face. So, but now they just signed a co-production deal, and Denis Villeneuve is going to direct. I think Denis Villeneuve is absolutely 100% the correct person to be making this movie. I think absolutely, if I had got to give him advice, ignore my script and everybody else's, which he's probably doing, and go with your gut and start fresh. I mean, if there's ideas in there that work, then yeah, by all means take them. But as a general rule of thumb, ignore them. I think the biggest problem for that movie has been that there haven't been the right type of directors around to make it. With all due respect to David Fincher, I never thought he was the right guy, because what he does, deep psychological stuff and crime stuff. That's not what Rendezvous with Rama is. And I can see why he would never gel with it. Denis Villeneuve he knows how to make a movie where characters are silent for God knows how long, but it's still telling a story, which is what Rendezvous with Rama is. There's lots of silent bits, but you're still telling a story. And so I'm really excited to see what he does with it, because I think now he's on board, he may actually be the guy to crack it.